Brian Boucher, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
So before we get to your career, the Flyers are struggling a bit. They had one of the worst months in hockey history, actually, in terms of goals allowed. I think it was like 66 in March or something like that. And a lot of scrutiny has fallen on the shoulders of a lot of players. But our very young netminder, Carter Hart, is not having the kind of season that he wanted to. Explain a little bit about where you think his head is right now. I was reading yesterday, despite his struggles this year, a poll of NHL goalies still have him ranked in the top 10. So he's still, in the minds of many, has quite a bright future. But how do you get over the sort of agonizing games he's had to struggle through this season?
Yeah, that's going to be the real test, is how he bounces back from a real adverse season. And I agree with a lot of the goalies in the National Hockey League that I think he has the ability to bounce back. He has a talent. He has a pedigree, all of that stuff that you look for. The one thing I would caution is, judging a player in a year that we have encountered this year with, all of the COVID protocols and it not being the normal year. I really have to force myself not to judge a player really harshly, judged on what they're going through off the ice. And the reason why I say that is because when you're in a struggle like this and things aren't going your way, a lot of times you would lean on your teammates. You would lean on veterans in your locker room to help get you through a certain situation. And that might be, spending time together on the road, doing dinners, hanging out with one another. Maybe an older guy takes you, under his wing and really makes sure that they take care of you, because it's a tough league. And although he's had success and he has a lot of talent, he's still a 22-year-old guy at the end of the day. And you don't figure it out overnight, especially at the goaltending position. It's the hardest position to play in the NHL. So you don't have the ability to do all of what I just said. I mean, you essentially go to the rink, you practice, your locker rooms are separated, you're not even together, the whole team, and then you go off to your house or to your apartment by yourself, with yourself. There is no hanging out with one another. So it becomes really difficult, and sometimes you need others to help you out. And so I think that's been maybe a case where, Carter hasn't been able to do that. His teammates haven't been able to be there for him maybe the way they would in normal years. So I'm not going to sit here and judge him to the nth degree on what he's going to be. I still think there's enough talent. I shouldn't say enough talent. There is plenty of talent in him to bounce back from this. The question will be does he lose confidence to the point where he can't find his game? That'll be the biggest question. That'll be the biggest turnaround. I think that's something that needs to be reset in the offseason. This is not something that can be done in 1 week span, although he's played better in the last couple of starts. I think he needs a complete reset in the offseason, come in under normal circumstances in a normal training camp, and see if he can rebuild his game from there. Because he's getting probably the biggest test of adversity he's had in his whole career. He was successful at the junior level, played on very good junior teams that were good defensively. He had success, playing for Team Canada at the World Juniors. So this is, and he had a good start to his NHL career. So this is his first real test of adversity, and we'll see if he can bounce back from it. I would say that he'll be able to, but there's no doubt all the eyes of the hockey world are going to be on him, seeing how he handles this pressure.
And you'll see some of the games too, where he'll give up 5 goals, and then you see the highlights, and they're all solid goals. He's certainly had some defensive struggles in front of him. No one expects you to stop a 2-on-1, 95% of the time.
You're absolutely right. I think, and I don't think, especially here in Philadelphia, I don't think the media has given a pass to the way the team is defended. They have not defended very well, and this is a shell of what maybe Alain Vigneault wants his team to be. And I think the underlying numbers, maybe the advanced analytics would point to that. Maybe they gave up chances like this last year, but their goaltending was better. That's a fair point. To point out that maybe they're not getting the big save at the right time, and that's why things are spiraling out of control. But to me, they just give up too much quality and too much, like you talked about, 2-on-1s, east-west plays. As a goaltender, if you face, 7 to 8 East-West plays in a hockey game, eventually there's going to be a breakdown of trust in those situations. Like if they continually go to the back door, if they're continually making those plays, it becomes very difficult for a goaltender to trust the fact that East-West play is not going to happen. So now you start cheating a little bit, and that cheating can lead to other problems. And then the other thing too, I mean, it's a two-way street. Start giving up bad goals as a goaltender, your defense is not going to trust you, and therefore they start trying to do your job, and it just snowballs in the wrong direction. That's why I say I think there's a complete reset that needs to happen here. A couple of weeks ago, I would have been more inclined to think that the Flyers are going to pull out of this. I don't see that happening now. I think they're in a place where the Boston Bruins will get in as the fourth seed in the East, and for the Flyers, it's just one of those situations where they're going to have to figure out how they're going to handle this expansion draft and where they're going to be going forward, and who's a part of this group to start next year. And Carter Hart will be a big part of that, in my opinion. But they definitely they played their way out of it, and it's too bad. It's just one of those years where it got away from them, and they got to regroup at this point.
So you've had, as a goalie, you've given up bad goals. You've had a couple of stretches where you struggled. You mentioned kind of the lack of companionship that the team has right now because of COVID. But when you had a rough game, was there someone that you sought out for advice, or did you just try to shake it off as quickly as possible?
I always tried to shake it off as quickly as possible by myself. I think we're all proud people, and we tend to think that we can do things on our own. But the reality is that it takes a village, for a lot of these NHL players, and they typically have support staff and family members or a spouse or a girlfriend or a best buddy away from the game that can kind of help, recenter them and help them out. But when I played, I remember back after my rookie year, I had a great rookie year, and my second year was atrocious. And I really struggled. I put way too much pressure on myself, and I felt like I had to be perfect. And I was, my contract expired after my rookie year, and I got a 2-year deal that I felt like I had to prove to the organization, to my teammates, to the city that I was worthy of this deal after only 35 games. But I had really good veterans my second year to help me through that whole thing. Guys like Mark Recchi and Rick Tocchet that were around, and I couldn't get out of my own way in that second season. And I ended up losing my job to Roman Cechmanek, who came in. He was an older guy and played terrifically. I think he made the All-Star game that year. And, so it was really hard for me. But I needed that reset in the summertime. And that's where I spent the whole summer in Philadelphia. I trained every day with Rick Tocchet at the Flyers Training Center. I played golf with him. We had softball games that we played with the Flyers team. We did everything together, and really what he did was he kind of got me reset. He got me to believe in myself once again. He got me that competitive edge. Instead of feeling down and feeling bad about myself, he was a guy that kind of got me charged up again. And that's what you need sometimes. That's where you think you can do it on your own, but sometimes you need that person who's been there before, who you respect immensely, to just kind of wrap their arms around you and say, you know what, it's going to be okay. We're going to get you back on track. And my third season in Philly, I was much better than my second season. It still was not the same type of play that I had my rookie year, but I felt like I got my career back on track. I eventually got traded to Phoenix, which was a different circumstance, different team, different expectations. But as far as somebody helping me out, that helped me. And I'm not suggesting that Carter Hart needs Rick Tocchet, but he might need somebody like that, somebody that kind of is there for him, that can kind of get him to kind of dust him off, shake it off, and just kind of reset and get back to work, because there's a lot of positives to his game. And, I think he's one of those guys that will bounce back, but it's going to be a real test for him.
But so much of being a goalie is it's muscle memory. It's, just a split second decision, just a reaction. How does if you start getting in your own head, how does that affect those, just jutting out your glove real quickly or playing an angle? Are you just, when you're down there in the net, are you just crawling inside your own head? Is it anxiety that's kind of preventing you from playing better?
Yeah, it's all of that. I mean, if you don't feel right emotionally, your confidence slips, and it's the difference between 1 or 2%. And that 1 or 2% at the highest level is all it takes to lose your spot, to lose your job, to lose your career. I mean, it is a very fine line. And you're right. It is muscle memory. It's about having been in those situations before, the reads. You know what I mean? Like when you read a play as a goaltender, you read the rush. You have seen this. You have seen this rush 1,000 times, right? You don't even think about how to react. It just is. It's instincts at that point. But if you're second guessing yourself, if you're second guessing your defenseman, if you're constantly worried about the noises in your head, that read gets clouded. And that's the one thing as a goaltender that you can't do. You have to just go out there and feel the game. You have to read and react. And it can be very difficult for a goaltender to explain to people what that is, because I think they just have the ability, the talent to just do it without having, putting it in words for people. But when you're just off, you're off. And if you're off by 1 or 2%, you may as well be off by 50%. It feels like you're behind on everything. The game feels 1,000 miles an hour. Nothing you do goes right. You don't get the breaks. You don't have that same feeling. And that's why I say the reset is needed. And I don't know if it can be done in a week. As a matter of fact, I don't think it can be done in a week. I think it's something that's going to take some time to kind of let the dust settle, and then get back to work, start building up, get to a normal situation, get to a normal training camp, same type of training, normal training at the normal times that you typically would do, and just shake it off as a one-off, and maybe not read too much into a season like this.
Brian, you're different than other goalies. One of the previous guests I had is Bernie Perron, and he's just wonderfully goofy, and like he meets like that goalie personality, and I think of like Ilya Brizgalov, who was just a space cadet, and you're not like that. You're like, you throw a bunch of sentences together. Your vocabulary is large. I don't think that you believe in any sort of weird, cultist type things like I think Brizgalov did. You're too sensible almost to be a goalie. How did you end up wearing the pads?
I mean, I have a goofy side to me. There's no doubt about it. I do.
Tell me. Let's get into that. What's goofy Brian Boucher?
I like to do impersonations. And I like to think that I have a funny side to me. I don't know if I'm going to share them with you right here for the fear of insulting people. You never know how people take. You never know how.
But imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. Can you give us?
That's what I say. But I'm gonna refrain from going down that road just to be safe.
Can you just at least give me a name of someone you do an impression of?
I do a Dominic Hasek, but out of respect for Dom and his career, and I have a ton of respect for what he's done. Until I get the okay to do it on a podcast where it's out to everybody, I think I'll keep it for the privacy of my friends and all of that. So, but yeah, how I became a goalie, I don't know. I mean, I think the question was how I became a goaltender. Was that the question, if I recall correctly?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. My brother was a goalie, my older brother, who was 6 years older than me, and I was too young to play on the youth hockey team where I was growing up in Rhode Island. So they needed a goalie. So they asked my dad if I would be interested. And I looked up to my brother. I love the goalie gear. I love the masks. I love the pads. And back then, this is, you're thinking about the early 80s. This is when the pads were brown, but there were some hints of like colored pads, like colored blockers. And I was like, oh my God, this stuff is awesome. And so I just, got into that, and I started and never looked back. And it was a position that, as you played, if anybody who's played goal, I mean, you are truly by yourself. Even though you have people helping you out, trying to block shots and defend and all of that, you are the last line of defense. And I think that pressure and that rush that you get when you make a difference in a game, I was just hooked to that at an early age. I mean, I just loved it. You're out there the whole time. You don't ever have to change. You're on the ice and you're the difference maker. And sometimes it comes with the glory, and sometimes it comes with the misery. But I tell you, as I look back on my career, there were some tough moments. There's no doubt about it. But I think the only times now that I'm on the other side is I only remember the good stuff. I don't look back and think about the times that I failed or anything like that. I look back at all the positive memories that I had playing and the teammates that I had and all that stuff, which makes it special.
Well, let's talk about 332 straight minutes of good moments. You still are the NHL record holder for longest shutout streak. So, you get a shutout. It happens. It's 60 minutes down. It's great. You're probably the first star of that game. And it happens again and again and again. And one thing that always bothers me about players is when they lie about their personal achievements. When they're like, I didn't even know that I had this streak going. You definitely knew you had the streak going. What was it like at minute 180?
It was fun. I mean, I backtracked that a little bit. That season I had fallen out of favor in Phoenix, and I fell to third string goalie with that team. We had Sean Burke, who was a great goalie, veteran guy, and it was supposed to be he and I. And I think eventually the plan was for me to succeed him in Phoenix, but he was injured the year prior. I was faltering, and they called up a guy by the name of Zak Burke, different spelling, who's now the goalie coach in Ottawa. Just got hired by the Ottawa Senators. Big guy, 6'5", 6'6", took up a lot of the net. Couldn't stay healthy, but had some talent, and he had a great finish to the year prior. Came up, played some games, and the Phoenix Coyotes were like, you know what, maybe we're going to give this guy a shot. So I ended up being relegated to third string, and at the time, for about a month or so, I didn't even practice with my teammates. They really moved me to third string. They put me on waivers. Nobody claimed me, and I stayed up in Phoenix, but I was only practicing with the goalie coach for about a month, and it was really frustrating because, I thought I was a guy that had a future in Phoenix, and so I was getting angry, and the assistant coach Pat Conacher, who would shoot on me, former NHL, played in LA, had a long career, great guy. He kept telling me to hang in there and your time will come. But I practiced with none of my teammates. It was the goalie coach and the assistant coach, Pat Connor. That's all we did for about a month. And if you know anything about goalies like that was really hard for me. And then one night, Zak Burke got injured in Anaheim, like he had for most of his career. Something came up, and it opened the door for me to get back in there. And after Christmas, I started playing and started the shutout streak. Actually, it started before Christmas in relief appearance of Sean Burke, who ended up getting injured. I get in there and finished up a game. I think I didn't allow any goals, and I got to start after Christmas, and then the streak started from there. And it felt so gratifying to have been, on the outside looking in for over a month to get this opportunity, and now to excel. It was like a dream come true, and it was the only time in my career where I really felt like I couldn't fail. And I don't know if you ever feel. I never felt that again, like that type of confidence after like 2 shutouts. I got to the point where I was like, man, I don't think I'm ever going to get scored on, and rode it for about 5.5 games, and eventually break the shutout, the record, modern day record. It was fun. I think my teammates were stressed out because they didn't want to make a mistake in front of me. Right. But I really enjoyed every minute of it. I mean, once we got to 4 and I knew the record was getting close, I felt that pressure. But it's the same type of pressure that you feel playing in the playoffs, but it was in January. So it was this great feeling that we never had in Phoenix because we were really not a very good team, and we were never going to play in the playoffs. So it kind of reminded me of my days in Philadelphia, where these games all of a sudden meant something, and you had this enormous amount of pressure, and I desperately wanted to break the record. As much as if I went back and looked at interviews or whatever, and I maybe downplayed it, nonsense. I wanted that record, one, because I wanted to show that I should have never been a third string goalie a month earlier, and I really and thankfully I got it, and I'm proud of it. I know some guys have come close, and I joke around every time somebody gets close. I always joke around on Twitter and say that I'm busting out the voodoo doll to jinx them. It's one of those that, truthfully, I mean, I hope the record stands for a long time. With the way the rules have changed and stuff, I don't know if it's a record that will be broken just because we have 3-on-3 overtime now and no red line. And back when I did it, we had ties and right. There was a red line. So it was a different game back then.
And then you transitioned after your career into broadcasting. Was that something that was always in the back of your mind? You're an analyst for NBC Sports coverage of hockey. Was that something you thought you started thinking about in your 7th or 8th year? Like, all right, I got to start figuring out what I'm going to do once I start putting on the skates.
Yeah, it's something that was in the back of my mind, no doubt. I had enough people when I was playing that told me that I should probably think about doing it. And at some point, you kind of get annoyed. You're kind of like, wait, are they trying to tell me something? Like I'm so bad that I should probably hang them up right now. But it was something that was always, there, and I thought about. I didn't know when I should get to it or how to get to it. To be honest with you, I mean, no formal training. I played major junior in the Western Hockey League, so I didn't go to college. So I had no broadcasting experience. Just the only experience I had was playing in Philadelphia and having to face the music after every game you played, and maybe that's the best thing for you, right? You're in a market where it's the hockey's important. The fans care. They want an answer. They want an explanation. They don't want you ducking. And I learned that right away. And I enjoy the job now. It's great. I get to analyze the game, be around the game, but not have the same feelings maybe when it doesn't go your way when you lose, right? I mean, I think you can. You can feel good about that. But I got to be honest with you. I mean, I really do miss being a part of, and we have, I don't want to say we don't have a team with NBC Sports, because we have a production team and there's a lot of people behind the scenes that make a broadcast go smoothly. But it's just different when you're talking about a win and a loss, right? Like for us, a broadcast is not judged on a win and a loss. We know when we made mistakes. It hasn't been a perfect broadcast yet that I've ever been on. So we judge it a little bit differently. But I do miss the feeling of being a part of an NHL team and pulling on the same rope to win a game, to try and win a championship. There is no greater feeling than as a goaltender when the buzzer goes off at the end of the game and you celebrate with the other 19 guys. That's a great feeling that I just have never been able to get again. And I think when guys that coach have that same feeling again, it's a little bit different, but it's as close as you ever get to being a player. And I think most players would say they miss the locker room and they miss those situations. And I'm no different in that regard.
Well, I spoke to Keith Jones last week for another episode of this. And when he first started, he sucked. He sucked so badly. He lost that initial job for NHL Tonight on ESPN. I think they signed him to like 15 episodes, and he just was. I don't know if you remember those early days of Keith Jones, but he was bad. And then Keith Jones is Keith Jones now. He's a natural.
Right?
Were you bad at first?
Oh yeah, I think I was. I mean, I've not gone back and looked at tape of my first few games. So I don't know how bad I was, but yeah, there's a huge learning curve in all of this, right? I mean, you're on the other side. It's so easy to talk about yourself, I think, although it's uncomfortable to sometimes talk about yourself when you're doing an interview, and that's the interview subject. But when you got to start talking about other players and what you see and breaking it down, there's a lot to learn on the broadcasting side that I think players, and I know that I didn't appreciate early on. And there is no really formal training. You just kind of learn on the fly. And if you can pick it up quickly, then great. If not, then you're probably without a job. But for me, I went and did the color stuff, color analyst with the Lehigh Valley Phantoms when they moved from Adirondack to Lehigh Valley. And I did 1 year of that. And that was a great place to go and make mistakes and kind of just like learn. And although the production side of it was clearly not as advanced as what we do at NBC Sports, I mean, you kind of get an idea of how the inner workings go, how to build packages, how to talk to your producer on talkback, and how to understand the traffic that's going on between your play-by-play guy and what's going on in the truck. I mean, there's voices going on, and you're trying to give a coherent, thought. It can be nerve-wracking at times for people. So there's all that, and I think I made mistakes there, and then I worked at NHL Network, which is another great place to go work at and make mistakes. And although there you get a lot of time when you're doing studio to kind of, think about what you want to say. And, they give you a lot longer to sort it out. That was a place that I learned a lot too. And then you go to NBC and the studio show is much tighter. It's much quicker. I mean, you've got to make a coherent thought within 15, 20 seconds and have video to back it up, so there's a lot that goes into it that maybe you didn't realize when you first started. So I'd like to think that, what is this, year 6 or maybe 6 or 7 for me now? I'd like to think that I'm a lot better today than I was at the start. I think Jonesy's being really hard on himself. I know he's told me, he said he was terrible when he started, but
Yeah.
I was playing and I wasn't really watching him at that time, so I can't verify if he was or not. I wouldn't give my opinion, but I know that how good Jonesy is now and how talented he is, and how he runs that studio at NBC Sports, that I find it very hard to believe that he was as bad as he says he was. But
Well, have you ever seen Broadcast News?
No.
Okay, so Albert Brooks is in it, and he finally gets a chance to go on air after kind of taking swipes at an anchor played by Jack Nicholson forever, or William Hurt. And then he gets on and sucks. Like, he's sweating bullets enough to the point that you can see him. He's like pitting out. That was kind of Jonesy. I mean, it's worth a watch. And now that, it would be sad because in the film, Albert Brooks never gets another chance, but Keith got another chance. So right. he was able to rectify his initial. I met when the first place that I ever broadcasted was a radio station in Asbury Park, New Jersey, called The Breeze, your home for unforgettable favorites. And my first 2 breaks I still have on CD. And I said the name Bruce Springsteen wrong because I was insane. I'm in New Jersey and Asbury Park. And I said Springsteen, which I've never said before or since.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, sucking in the beginning is part of the process.
Right.
So, there's nothing to be ashamed of. But that being said, I have those breaks. I have not gone back and listened to them because it is difficult to watch yourself be that bad.
Yeah, and I even truthfully to this day I have a hard time listening to myself or going back and watching a game. It just doesn't feel comfortable. You kind of it's cringeworthy. If I do go back and watch a game, I have. I mean, but it's not the most comfortable thing. I do go back and watch games, to see maybe what I thought I saw during the game. Is it really what I saw? As you watch it on TV, just to kind of learn from those moments and see if you would have done something differently in that situation. But yeah, man, it's hey, look, if you suck at the beginning, at least there's nowhere to go but up,
Right.
And
exactly.
That's one way of looking at it. And I don't think anybody expects people who played to come in and be perfect at it. I think people are very understanding that this is a whole new world and guys are trying, and we can't fault the guy for trying.
Yeah, it makes you wonder why people make sex tapes. Like, why would you go back and watch that? But when you get direction, and this is something that I find interesting about the NHL. It's never going to be bigger than the 4th biggest sport. I think that they've sort of realized that. So it's about like doing the best you can with that fan base that you have. When you get direction, are they more interested in pertinent analysis, or do they tell you some? Because I'm always incredibly excited for TNT's halftime show during the NBA. My interest in the NBA has dropped off this season a little bit, but I always make sure that I watch the highlights from that. And Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal are never right about anything. Like, I think Barkley put down a $400,000 bet on the Trailblazers this year, but they're so much fun to watch. And it's not because of the analysis, it's the interactions. And then you throw in Kenny Smith and Ernie. When you're kind of in the studio like that, are they like, all right, give us personality, or do they want like, okay, we want you to be the smartest guy in the room and give us the best analysis?
I think the only direction that I've really gotten is they want an opinion. I don't know if it necessarily has to be right, but if you give an opinion and state your reasons as to why you give your opinion, then that's all you can do, right? And I think, when you look at that show on TNT, on the NBA, I mean, you're talking about major stars, right? Mm-hmm. Not for 1 second do myself or Keith Jones even think that we're even close to the same stratosphere as people like Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal. I mean, we're just not, right? So I think for us, we give our opinions. I don't know that we don't have the personalities that those guys do. So I think we try to give our analysis and try to be as factual and correct as possible. I mean, and be as professional as you can be. And if the fans like it, great. If they don't, I'm sure they'll voice their opinion on social media. But I think for us, it's just about giving an opinion. It's not being wishy-washy on certain things, and not every subject, warrants a real hard opinion. Like it just might be pretty. You see it, I see it the same way. There's no reason to get crazy about it, but there are certain situations where, where situations play out, and I think people want to know what you think or what you saw and what you see and why do you see it that way. And but yeah, I mean, look, those guys have such star power, in the NBA, and they were wonderfully talented players. They're larger than life personalities, and it's just I guess it's another world in that regard, right? And in the United States, in hockey, we're trying to grow the game. We're trying to grow at the grassroots level. We're trying to make the game more inclusive, more accepting to people. And I think to a large part of our population in the United States, I think the game is misunderstood and people haven't had access to it. So I think in a lot of ways, we're trying to grow the game that way, draw interest from that, and let the product sell the game, right? I mean, we've got some terrifically talented players now with tremendous skill sets. We're trying to highlight that. I always think that personalities are huge in the game too. Like, you got to have people that have charisma, that bring it every day, that let you inside their lives, and I think that always helps. And if you have guys that are guarded and don't really want to let you in, it's hard for fans to see that. But I think nowadays there's just so many different avenues to get to know players. It doesn't just have to be on television. They, through their social media, you can interact with them and see what they do, something that wasn't available for when I was playing. So it's a whole new world, and how fans digest it, that's the key. But I'd like to think that we're making strides in growing the game. But yeah, those guys on TNT, man, they're something else.
Yeah, let's talk about social media for a second. Are you glad that it wasn't around when you were a player?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like on the fence with social media. I'm at that age where I'm trying to embrace it, like I'm trying to understand the importance of it. I don't know that I utilize it in the right way. I don't know if I was a player, if I would have handled it very well. Like, especially in Philly, like, I mean, as a goalie, I literally tried my hardest every single day not to read the newspaper in Philly. Like, I tried my hardest not to turn it on sports radio, right? Because it was hard enough to do your job as is, and then you add in the fact that you're hearing all this outside noise and getting people's opinions. I don't think I would have handled it very well personally. For me, I have to get in the zone, worry about my process, do my thing, and just be naive and dumb to everything else outside. That's how I would have operated, which probably would have meant no endorsement deals, through all of the stuff and the extra attention that comes with it. But hey, look, I mean, if you want to open yourself up, you got to take the good with the bad in those situations.
Well, I'm looking at your Twitter account now, and I think you play it pretty safe, which is smart. I definitely know people who have lost their jobs because of a tweet. Yeah, you're overall, it's a very positive, wholesome feed I'm looking at. You got kind of cheering on, your kids' teams, cheering on. There's one about Doc Emmerich. Who doesn't love Doc Emmerich? Right. Cheering on the Flyers. I think that it's a good use of an account because I now am deeply immersed in Flyers Twitter, and it can be quite vicious, Brian, as you would imagine.
Yeah.
You're a blue check mark. You have to use your real name. You're not Monkey Farts 77 or some fake avatar that can say whatever they want because no one's ever going to find out their real identity.
Yeah, I mean, I truthfully, I mean, I think it's important how you use it, right? I mean, I think you got to just there's so much negativity out there in the world, and I don't want to partake in that. I mean, for me, I cheer for my kids. I tweet about the Flyers occasionally. I give an opinion on that, but if I don't really have anything nice to say, I don't know that I really need to tweet that out. You know what I mean? It's not that I don't ever have like a negative thought in my head, but I just don't understand why that needs to be put out there. I've had so many bad days in my life as a professional playing hockey. Have somebody pile on and beat a person up, like I don't see the good in that, So I just let it go, and if you see something positive, maybe when something goes good, or tweet about it. Like I think it's cool. Maybe I think some people still want to hear from me, hear what I have to say. I don't think they want to hear every 2 seconds, and I try to be mindful of that. I don't try not to overdo it.
Let's talk about some opinions that you may have about this current Flyers team. As we're speaking today, they lost once again to one of the worst teams in the modern era, this Buffalo Sabres team, who had an 18-game winless streak earlier in the season. And Carter Hart, I feel like, is, to get back to him a little, whenever anyone criticizes this team, Carter seems exempt. Like, okay, we need a better core around him. But certainly the lightning rod for criticism is always going to fall on either the star player or the captain, and the star player and the captain are both the same person. We have Claude Giroux here. Is he the right captain for this team?
Yeah, I played with Claude, and I remember him as a very competitive, driven, committed teammate, and I'll stand by that. So, I mean, I think he is. I don't see a better option in that locker room right now to be the captain of this hockey team. If they acquire somebody that is better, I may change my tone on that. But everything that I know about Claude Giroux tells me the kid is a winner, and I saw it from day one. And I'm sure it's been frustrating for him to not be able to get back to the Stanley Cup final like we did in 2010, and it eats at him. I know it does, because I know what type of person he is. He cares immensely. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, it's a long-winded answer. I think he is the right guy, because I just don't know if there's anybody in that locker room that is better suited to be that guy. And I know yesterday in that Buffalo game, he iced the puck, he lost the face-off, things unraveled quickly. That was a devastating loss. There's no doubt about it. They've got no room for mistakes right now, and to cough up games like that against a team that had, virtually nobody in the lineup because of the trade deadline, which makes it even more frustrating for the players, but also for the fans. So yeah, I mean, look, again, but it goes back to judging people in a time where it's not a normal year. I'm gonna stop short of really hammering on their team. They made nice strides last year in the bubble. It looked like this team was going in the right direction. There's been too many players that have not played to the level of expectation that fans have had, that analysts have had, that I think their management team has had. And it's starts with the goaltenders. I mean, Elliott, who started well, has tailed off as well. To their D core, their young D, like guys like Sanheim and Myers and Provorov just haven't played as good as they did last year, and that's been a big hole for them. And it's just been a frustrating year all the way around.
So would you say that this entire season is you should just get a pass? Because there's obviously a lot of pressure to get rid of Vigneault, the coach as well, AV. Is this just kind of like, right? Because even he just seems mystified when he's speaking. He's like, we were in control of the game. I don't know what's happening. Things just haven't been the same since COVID. Is that good enough for a coach to say?
No, I mean, I think but I do say this though. I think he truly is mystified. I think he's kind of like just confused, and for him to be confused, I think it's understandable, because I think fans are confused. I think he's confused, but at the same time, he's never going to give what's really inside of his head. Like, his job is to kind of filter it, make sure, that you don't go down a road where it's, you're giving all the information that you would give inside the room to the outside, right? So there's an element of that you got to read between the lines when he's speaking. This team is just, I don't want to say that they get a full pass. It's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm saying is that some of these young guys that I expected more of, that, like on the back end, Myers has not been as good as he was last year. Is he dealing with something physically? I don't know. We maybe find out at the end of the year. Sanheim hasn't been as good as he was last year. Provorov at times hasn't been as good. Is it just Niskanen? Is that really what it is? Or maybe these guys are putting too much pressure on themselves. Maybe it's a schedule. Maybe there's a lot of things as to why maybe they're not, but they haven't played to the level that we've expected. And that's why I say if they're not going to make the playoffs, a complete reset. They've got to make some changes to this club and what direction they want to go. And coming in to start next season, you have to see improvement. You have to see the tone that we saw in this club last March, early February, when they were really humming. That's the Flyer team that I think fans want to see. Play with passion, defend well. Their power play has always been a strong part of this team. When this team has always been successful, it's been about their power play that's really carried momentum. And that really hasn't been the case. I think when they've struggled, I think there's been a lot of confusion on their power play, a lot of disjointedness. I mean, now they got Gostisbehere running that top unit. Before it was Provorov. I mean, they've got to really figure that out. But now going forward, I mean, what does this team look like post-expansion draft era, right? I mean, who do they protect? Are they going to protect 5-3, or are they going to protect 7-3, or are they going to protect 4-4? It'll be interesting to see what they do going forward. I think I just saw Scott Lawton signing an extension in Philadelphia. I think that just came across. So that's a sign that they're keeping a guy that I think is an important part to their team. That would lead me to believe if they signed him that they're only going to protect 3 defensemen. And are they going to go get another defense? I don't know. I mean, there's just so many things that need to play out in this offseason to figure out with this team and what direction they're going. That's why Chuck Fletcher is making the big bucks.
Talk about how the Flyers fan base is different than any other. One thing I don't know if you remember the Winter Classic that was played at Citizens Bank Park. What was that, back in 2012?
12? Was that 12? Yeah.
And the alumni game before the current Flyers game drew just as many fans, 45,000. And it's so interesting to me that there were a lot of players that played for a bunch of different teams, but still identify most as a Flyer. I mean, Keith Jones being a good example of that. He was only with the team, I think 2.5 years, but feels like a lifetime Flyer. And I think a lot of that is when the Flyers fan base embraces you. It's like no other fan base in the league. Did you feel that?
Absolutely. I played on, I think it was 6 or 7 different teams. All of my positive memories. I mean, aside from the Phoenix situation where I had the 5 shutouts, all my positive memories come from the playoffs with Philadelphia. That's it. I mean, when I think about being a Flyer, I think about the history of the team, the players that have played here before. Mr. Snyder, who was the best owner in the National Hockey League, that cared so much about his team and his players. It was a family. When I got drafted here and I started here, it really was a family. And that set the tone. And I think, that feeling as a player, and then you have success in the playoffs. And although we never won a Stanley Cup, my rookie year, we lost in the conference final to Jersey. And then in 2010, we lose in the final to Chicago. But the feeling that you get as a player in a city like this, the fan support. I mean, on an off day, you go get a coffee at Starbucks, and the people that just they're so appreciative of the effort that you gave, and they're so excited. They rally around your team. I mean, that's what an athlete wants. I mean, athletes, they want to make a living, they want to win championships, but at the end of the day, everybody wants to be accepted and liked and respected. And when you get that in a city like this, I mean, it's easy to call it home. And it was easy for me. I mean, I knew when I came back to Philadelphia, I wanted to raise my kids here. I'm from Rhode Island, so it's only 4.5 hours away. My wife is from there too. We identified South Jersey as a place where we wanted to live. We love being here. We love everything about it. And I think a lot of guys feel the same way. Man, I think it all starts with, when we were coming up, Mr. Snyder, the feeling you get around the organization, the success we had in the postseason, and that feeling that you just want to be around it all the time. I wonder if today's player has that same connection. I don't know. I can't speak to that, but I can tell you why I feel like this is the most important place that I played, and why I look back on it. And even though I had failures here, this is a place that I only think about positive things, and it's why I live here now.
You mentioned that you still get some of the same feelings as a coach that you did as a player. You know, you're right there on the ice. You celebrate every victory with the team, mourn every loss. Is that something that ever appealed to you? Why aren't you behind the bench somewhere?
I thought about getting into goalie coaching right away, and I reached out to then general manager Ron Hextall, and it just never it didn't work out that way. I was thinking about more like on goalie development side, maybe going to work with prospects and helping them out and just starting there. And I don't think that there was not a spot available. And so, but he did mention that, you know, the Lehigh Valley Phantoms were going to be coming from Adirondack. He's like, you know, they wanted a color analyst. Would you be interested in that? So I said, sure, I'll dabble in that. And I think that's where the coaching thing stopped. I mean, I coached my son at youth hockey. So I had experience doing that, and that is quite the experience, you know, coaching your own son and then having to deal with all of, you know, the parent stuff. It's quite interesting. And I love coaching, don't get me wrong, but I think I've just gone so far down this road now that maybe that ship has sailed. But I'm so intrigued by almost every job inside of hockey. Like, I'm intrigued by amateur scouts. I'm intrigued by pro scouts, assistant general managers, player development. Like, I have such respect for all the jobs inside this hockey world. And it would be unbelievable to shadow all of these different jobs to see what they do on a daily basis to make it work. I mean, to me, that is really fascinating. And that's why there's, you know, I'm 44 years old. Who knows what the future holds? But I would never close the door to scouting, to coaching, to any of that stuff, just because I think there's you know, there's real gratification in all those jobs, right? On different levels, whether it's helping a team or helping a player. I think there's just so many things that you can do that you'd feel good about yourself in working in those jobs that who knows where it goes. I mean, I'm happy doing what I do now, but, you know, things change always.
All right. Are your kids impressed with your achievements? It's always, it's a weird thing growing up when your dad is a professional athlete. Like, for a while, it's really cool. I got to meet Mario Lemieux and Adam Oates, and, you know, first time I met Eric Lindros, I actually had a Quebec Nordiques hat on, which was a faux pas. Just coincidentally had it on. And then for a while, it's like you get the questions, well, why didn't you ever get into playing? Which, you know, I've answered a million times. My dad didn't want me to play hockey, interestingly enough.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was an injury ended his career. You know, in South Jersey at the time, there was just a couple of rinks, the Coliseum, really. That was about it. There's certainly more now, but your kids, because I see, you know, behind you got your jerseys up. I'm sure you have some other memorabilia. Certainly in my house, in my parents' house, there's an entire Zak Kindrachuk museum that one room is dedicated to. And I've kind of come full circle again, where it's like, you know what? It's really, really awesome that my dad achieved what he did, and I love. He still gets mail asking for autographs. Now that I've started this podcast, people are just coming out of the woodwork, asking what he's up to, and he loves all that. And seeing someone even approach him, you know, the last time we were at a Flyers game, ask him to sign a stick or whatever it was. It's like, that's really awesome. What's your kid's relationship with you as a former NHL? And now you're on TV all the time too. Like, are you appointment watching for them, or is it just like, ugh, dad's on again?
Yeah, I don't think they watch me. So I got an 18-year-old son who is he's an aspiring player and a good player. He's up for the draft this year. He played at the U.S. program the last 2 years. So I think he might get annoyed by the fact that I played and I have an opinion and I'm always offering my opinion to him, where I've learned to kind of cool off on that a little bit. And if he approaches me for advice, I will give it to him. But he's at the age now where I think it's in the figure it out for himself stage. And if he needs help, come to me. But I don't know that he looks back, and you'd have to ask him that question. He's tough on me, I'll tell you that. Which he keeps me honest, and he chirps me pretty good from time to time. But I remind him all the time, you know, like I'll tell him that I was a first round pick, and he'll scratch. He's like, wow, I find that so hard to believe. You know, he's insinuating that my career was terrible and that, you know, how would anybody take me in the first round? Whereas my daughter, who's 16 years old, she has, you know, she loves me and she's very sweet, and she, you know, and I'll tell her I'm going to do a game in Boston, and she, oh, good luck. And, you know, she's very kind that way. And she understands that I take this job seriously and I care about it. I think she's proud of me. my son, he's tough. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you didn't play back then, and the times have changed. And you mentioned it was only one rink. Now the hockey is so popular here in the Philadelphia area and South Jersey. My son grew up playing here, and it was the one reason why I didn't want him to be a goalie in this area, because I felt like the pressure of being a goalie was like, oh my God, I can't have to do that. So maybe along the lines of what your dad did to not get you involved, I made sure my son wasn't a goalie. I wanted him to have his own identity, be a player, be a forward, and it's worked out nicely for him. So, but times have changed, because now the rinks, the popularity here in South Philly, and in South Jersey, I mean, it's tremendous.
Well, actually, so I ended up finally playing in high school, and I kind of wish I had played, because I was, for the limited amount of ice time I had up to that point, I was good. I scored a lot of goals, but I was obviously on track for nothing. And my coach looked at the roster the first day. It's funny, I just connected with him again via this podcast, and was like, oh my God, I got a Kindrachuk on my team. This kid must be a ringer. And then I hit the ice, and I am not a Kindrachuk in that sense of the word. And he described himself as heartbroken after that first practice.
That's terrible. I mean, you think about the pressure. Oh my God. I know it's not like the name Kindrachuk. I mean, it's not one of those names that you see all the time. I mean, it just hits you right in the face. It's not like you're Smith and you can hide, Oh, that's too bad. That's heartbreaking.
I'm over it now. It's a couple decades ago. And he said he did admit by the end of the season I had greatly improved, which was not hard to do, because man, that first game, the highlight of my first game was I checked the other team's goalie by accident. I just did not have hockey stops mastered quite yet. Final question here, Brian. Can I please get you to do the Dominic Hasek?
Oof. No, I'm going to take a pass on it, honestly. I just, it's one of those, I'm just not comfortable just yet. Yeah, it's one thing if let's get together and have a couple beers off to the side, and I'd be happy to do it for you there. Let's just. Well, I'm reaching out. Let people know that I do these impersonations, but it's for private.
Well, I'm trying to get Hasek on this show, so maybe he does a Brian Boucher impersonation, and then maybe you'll feel comfortable doing yours. Maybe
then I'll agree to it then.
Well, thanks for spending some time with me. It was great to talk to you, Brian. I wish your son the best of luck. I hope he's a second-round draft pick, so you still have that to lord over his head.
We all want bragging rights, right? Doesn't matter if it's your own kid, but yeah. No, it was great spending time with you, Zach. Good luck with the podcast, and anytime you get to talk about what you do, it's a lot of fun. So I appreciate you having me on.
No problem. And later today, I'm talking to Reggie and Jamie Leach, who I think are
awesome.
I think he's the only Flyer from the Bullies team who actually spawned a kid who made it to the NHL. So that should be fun.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Brian, you have a great day.
All right,
and let's talk to each other soon. Maybe after your kid gets drafted, we could do a little update on his career a bit. And after I have Hasek on.
And you can ask him what he thinks of me. You can get a real answer.
That would be great. All right. Have a great day, Brian.
All right, man. Be good.
I'll talk to you soon.